Warning, incoming game over. Warning, incoming game over.
Well, the Calgary Flames have found a way to salvage 4 points out of their road swing out east, taking 2 points away from the Chicago Blackhawks. They take home a win by a final score of 3-1. Daryl Sutter hockey, as I saw it called on X, the Everything app. Thank you so much for tuning in, folks. Don't know, my name's Conrad Krausert, and well, I'm marginally happy that the Calgary Flames won. I'm also was happy when Winnipeg Jets took a jump over them. Been a very polarizing day if you're a Calgary Flames fan. Hearing comments from Murray Edwards throughout the day. From Pierre LeBrun. Like, it's been a day. Obviously, when we were talking last show, we didn't know if Rasmus Anderson would play today. It was in the lineup, and I have to think if he was in the lineup today, he will likely play again on Thursday. But we got a lot of game to get through. The Mr. Watts in chat asking a question. I will answer that when we get to our overtime period at the end of the game. I'll mention that a little bit probably as well in the second period of the show. But let's head into reviewing the game that was. And you know what? Calgary Flames, I thought, came out okay. But immediately, it wasn't quite the Jacob Markstrom experience today, where the Flames have the first shot on goal that goes in, as was so often the case when it was Jacob Markstrom and Dan Vladar to a lesser extent as the tandem for the Calgary Flames. But it was kind of seeing a young Flames defender in Hunter Brustevich kind of getting a little bit lost, and Captain Nick Foligno found a soft spot in the zone, fired that puck on, and it's kind of a broken line because it's not the full 3 fourth line forwards that are on the ice at the time. It was Blomberg out. Actually, no, it was the full 3 because it was Dryden Hunt back there, I do believe. Calgary Flames. I didn't actually look at line rushes. Yeah, it was Dryden Hunt, left winger, who plays 535. We'll have words about that, I'm sure, numerous times tonight. But yeah, it was Hunt out there with Kirkland. Was it Lomberg actually on the ice? Yeah, he came off the bench a little bit late. But yeah, it's the third pairing on D, and the 3 forwards, one of which who had only got into town a little bit earlier in the day. Tough watch there. Nick Foligno gets only his second of the year, which is kind of shocking because he's one of the names I actually on the Chicago Blackhawks roster coming into today. The fact that he's only had 2 games is a little bit interesting. Assist to Doc and Flaggart. Flames down 1-0, but the Flames actually do battle back, and they answer fairly quickly. After the penalty taken by Matt Grzelcyk for interference on Nazem Kadri. It is what the Flames are calling Power Play Unit 1 that jumps over the boards. Of course, that is not the power play line that has Nazem Kadri or Jonathan Huber, though. It's the line that has Connor Zary, Igor Sharangovich, and Morgan Frost, and of course the captain. And it is Michael Backlund wins the faceoff, held at the line by Sharangovich. It is held at the line by Sharangovich. Rasmus gets it over. It's a great passing play there. Eventually, Backlund just pushes it over Igor Sharangovich. He tucks it in, his 9th goal of the year. With that goal, you have to make notice that Igor Sharangovich has more goals on the season now than both Nazem Kadri and Jonathan Huberdeau. And this is a player who has spent parts of this season eating popcorn and watching from the rafters. Not saying it's anything that we have to necessarily watch out for, but it is something that we do have to make note of. Because boy, oh boy, our top stars are turning extremely. I don't even know if we can call them top stars on this team anymore. Big shout out to Michael Backlund. I think this is another improvement of his game. Of course, all of the other Trey Kroner have left this team. The last one of the three sweet. Of course, I'm talking about Backlund, Lindholm, and Anderson. And the Flames Swedish shirt. But that's not all the scoring that there was in the first period. And because it is the captain doing the work, he had his point from the power play marker, took the puck away, races in, and outweights Knight. A sweet Swedish backhand, unassisted goal by your captain, Michael Backlund. And it was a back and forth affair, but the Flames never really looked back into the so after that. Of course, before we talk about that, shots actually were in the favor of Chicago, 9-6 for the Hawks after 20. A little bit of nastiness came in the second period. Of course, we saw 5 minutes, the fight between Joel Farabee and Connor Murphy after, I think I'm going to call it a reverse hit. Joel Farabee leveled on to Murphy. Murphy took the worst of it, and I kind of thought he was looking a little woozy before he eventually agreed to the fight. Not sure that I love that if I am a Blackhawks fan, but no, it happened, and then Levashnov and Hunt take the offsetting roughings. Of course, Ryan Donato takes double minor for roughing when he takes down Kevin Ball. Should have been a longer power play, of course, and you see Connor Zary just kind of walking that line that he doesn't necessarily have as much of his game, being usually a skill guy, but you are starting to see him add a little bit more grit, a little bit more time in the what some people would call the garbage areas of the ice. But Zary pots that one home. Sorry to hear that there's difficulties on your end, Denim Man. Yeah, it doesn't look like there's any drop frames on my side, and it is optimized. But that's your second period. The Flames had 11 shots, Chicago only managing 9. We get into the third period where things kind of get bogged down. I didn't think there was a lot of wide open play, and the Flames are just trying to limit the danger. Obviously, we did see the Mackenzie Weegar blocked shot in about midway through the second, bounced off his ankle. You never like to see that, especially considering probably going to be your number one right-handed or right defenseman in the next half a week. We'll see. But Matt Coronado ices this one with just over a minute left. Good hard work in the defensive zone by Igor Sharangovich, who, I gotta say, this was one of the best games I've seen from Sharky in a long time. I don't know, maybe he changed his pregame deal. Maybe he Michael Backlund's sister and his nephew coming in more often. But good work from Igor Sharangovich today. Not something I've said a whole lot. He's been a floater, and as I said, he's spent a lot of time scratched this year. And Matt Coronado scores his 13th goal of the year. And is live on a rival channel. Interesting. I'll have to have a conversation. But we head up. And we get on with it. Calgary Flames, they come away with a final score of 3-1. Talk about the stats a little bit. The Flames actually were down in the face-off dot today, only winning 45.6% of the face-offs. Flames, however, power play goal in this game, they were 1 for 4. They killed off all 4 opportunities for a very dangerous Chicago Blackhawks team when they're on the man advantage. 19 minutes to 17 in favor of the Blackhawks. The Flames, however, here's a number that I really was kind of watching in this game went on. 29 hits awarded to the Calgary Flames, 11 going the way of the Blackhawks. Oh, he's on a podcast. All right. But yeah, it was kind of interesting that the Flames really put emphasis on that physicality, because you saw Hunter Brusevich and Dryden Hunt step back into the lineup. And that's not necessarily something I would have thought would have been the stat that would change with those two coming in. I would have thought, obviously, Hunter Brustevich, offensive defenseman, and Dryden Hunt, as I said, only played 6 minutes in the game, which is a problem. But I thought it would have been more skill, but it seems Flames' message was do not let the Calgary Flames do their momentum. Or rather, the Chicago Blackhawks have their momentum. Blackhawks did block 19 shots compared to the 12 blocked by the Flames. Giveaways were even at 18, but the Blackhawks actually led in takeaways. So that's kind of your breakdown of today's game. As I said, very much Daryl Sutter-esque hockey tonight. But the Flames come away. As I said, they get 4 out of a possible 10 points on the 5-game road swing. Kind of the weird thing is the Flames come away with their only 2 wins on the road swing, both goaltending for Devin Cooley, and Cooley's been good all year. But I think if you're a Flames fan, that has to worry you a little bit. Is this a Flames team that just isn't playing as well in front of Dustin Wolf? Maybe feeling they need to ratchet up when the backup is in, having maybe a little bit too much belief in Dustin Wolf. We'll talk a little bit about that as we go on here. Of course, this does mean Chicago wins the season. Don't actually sweep it. Chicago obviously had the shutout in their visit here to Calgary on November 7th. The big win on the 8th match in Chicago. This being the 3rd game of the season series. I swear I'm awake and not half asleep still. My energy drink here takes down the final meeting of the season. And it really feels kind of weird that we've already gone through that 3-game set against a Western Conference opponent this early. Of course, with Chicago being the easternmost of the Western teams, now that we don't have the Detroit Red Wings in the Western Conference, maybe that's why it makes a little bit more sense to condense that travel a little bit, because the Western Conference already has much more travel the rest of the league. Yeah, that's the rationale. I can't tell you. But let's head on to period number 2. But as we do, oh my god, I had full 4 periods up this whole time. That works. Period number 2. But before we do that, you hit share, hit subscribe, hit that like button if you like what you're seeing. Hey, if you like some of the short form content that we put out, big shout out to our editors for that one. I know it's Jordan, who I think is currently on the Montreal. Oh no, they've already ended for the day. Jordan, the new editor and intern, doing a great job with that, and he generated all the graphics as well. So big shout out to the newest member of the Game Over team doing that. And I know we also posted a video talk about the rant that I had in the last episode. Not going to have that much of a pre-plan today. But, you know, I think there's a lot of things that you can be really happy with for the Flames. And I think there's a couple of really worrying signs. I think the really great thing that I saw today was I really enjoyed watching Connor Zary and Igor Sharangovich today. And I think you actually should have awarded Sharangovich with more ice time. He only ended the day +1, but he had just under 17 minutes of ice time. I think he probably deserved more. And Connor Zary, he ends the game even with 2 penalty minutes, but I thought he was really moving today. I was really happy with Connor Zary's game. And I know people are probably going to want me to pump the tires of Mackenzie Weegar, especially based on that late shot block. But I actually thought Weegar really struggled in the first 20 minutes getting into this game. Obviously had the 2 penalties, 5 minutes, the trip against Foligno, and the high stick on Ryan Donato. I kind of felt this was actually kind of a floater game there for Mackenzie Weegar. 20 minutes, obviously he missed a lot of time after blocking that shot. It really seemed that Sportsnet really wanted to pump him up today, talking about how physical and how many shots he blocks. Remember who blocked a lot of shots for the Calgary Flames team? Wasn't very good otherwise. was a guy that ended up costing this Flames team a lot more ways than just playing, and that's Dennis Weidman. Like, if Kenzie Weegar is going to be a guy that is, okay, talking about garbage stats, we're going to talk about plus minus. If Mackenzie Weegar is going to be that guy that is that minus 20 guy, but oh, hey, he's blocking a billion shots, I don't think that's good enough for this Calgary Flames, and I certainly don't think that he is necessarily going to be the number one defenseman on the right side for very long with this team if that's going to be his play. And everyone's saying, oh, he's with a young defenseman in Yan Kuznetsov. But I actually really think Yan Kuznetsov been the better player on that pairing. So I really wonder if this is the way that the Flames are going to play for the next little while and rely upon that pairing a little bit more heavily. I don't know. Maybe you'll see Kevin Ball out there with Mackenzie Weegar with the Rasmus Anderson trade currently looming on the horizon. Whoever knows how long. We'll see. I don't necessarily think that's the best plan for the Calgary Flames moving forward, but we will have to kind of wait and see. And that kind of gets us into the question here with Mr. Watts. What do you think of Weegar putting his body on the line tonight? I like that he's playing and understanding his role in that second pairing. But at the same time, I really, really have a tough time balancing what he's bringing on the ice with how poorly he's been in the offensive zone. Because this is a player who I expect a lot more from. He attacking 90 feet of the zone, and we haven't seen that this year. Again, is this what Mackenzie Weegar is? Is he going to be a player who really struggles in his own zone the rest of his NHL career? Who knows? I'm not willing to say that full stop. But we'll see. Let's head into period number 3 because I think this is something that really needs to be discussed. Because boy, where was it here? With the ownership group and especially Murray Edwards being quoted as a Pierre LeBrun reported that Murray Edwards, here's a Buffalo Sabres style rebuild for the Calgary Flames. We went over this in the last talk that I had, the rant about how the Flames were becoming the Rangers. But you know what? The Sabres might be a little bit of a better parallel. Because it was an owner and his wife who wanted to intermingle a little bit too much and put their personal touch on the team. And they're going to hire a guy that they like rather than from a non-hockey background to be their general manager for the past 10 years. The guy that got butts and sure, that shouldn't be an issue in Buffalo. That's a sports crazed town, and I know there's a lot of Sabres fans in that area, but like Murray, let's be honest with ourselves here. Shout out to my guy James Johnson and all the fine fellows over at the win column. But the Flames have 9 postseason appearances compared to the Sabres 4. Okay. Sure, that waits in the way of the Flames. But the Flames have less playoff wins with more appearances than the Sabres do. Flames have only ever procured 23 playoff wins since the lockout. And, like, we're not just going to go back all the way in history because then the Sabres would blow us out of the water. And then if we look at playoff series wins, the Flames have won 2. 2 entire series in those 9 playoff appearances. Sabres have won 4. That includes 2 trips to the conference finals. I wish we were the Buffalo Sabres. I wish we could have, maybe one of the worst decades and mismanaged assets. But hey, Logan Thompson had a hat trick today, and the Buffalo Sabres have won 15 of their past 17 games. We should be so lucky to be the Buffalo Sabres. Because when they finally did get their heads out of the proverbial sand, or out of their proverbial butts, they've been playing good hockey. Like, it's so sad. I cannot name a single team who has, since the, actually no, I can name one team who effectively retooled to get themselves a Stanley Cup, and that is most statistically unlikely Stanley Cup that has happened in the modern era, that being the St. Louis Blues. And if you want to model yourself after that St. Louis Blues that was in last place come American Thanksgiving, I'm sorry, you're doing it wrong. You're looking at the outlier rather than the data. And yes, what Phobos is saying in chat is completely correct. Rebiggle's a tool of another place here on YouTube. I would take what modern Sabres are probably 9 times out of 10 right now over what Calgary Flames are. I wish I could credit who I saw it from, but didn't favorite it. But if you offered a swap of just the entire Flames roster, the entire Sabres roster, including Dustin Wolf, I think the Sabres say no. And I think a lot of people who understand what's going on but I don't know. And I did say that, Phobos, that Sabres have less appearances in the playoffs than the Flames do, but they have more playoff wins and more series wins. I would take success rather than 2 games of money going into the pockets of Calgary Sports and Entertainment. And hey, I think actually that Josh Stone trade that we talked about earlier in the season, where I'm like, I don't know why Utah made that trade. I think Buffalo knows why they made that trade. He's been good for them. 2 points tonight. So I think they're well on their way of getting out of their own way. I don't think they have or I think they're starting to understand that their ownership doesn't understand hockey and needs to take their hands off the steering wheel. Of course, this is 1 year out of a decade. And that's something, like, as Mr. Watts is saying in chat, like, if we made the playoffs, it would be a waste of 8 days. Yeah. Really starting to feel that way, especially, hey, you want to be the 8th seed that gets in the playoffs and runs into the Colorado Avalanche this year? I can tell you I certainly don't. But I would rather this team realize that even if they end up picking 7th overall, that needs to be the red flag waving that everyone's saying it is. But how much do I believe that our ownership is capable of understanding that? I don't believe it at all. But yeah, I have to say, great performances from both Cooley, Backlund. I would say one of the best performances we've seen in a while from Sharon Govich. I think we're starting to see real Connor Zary starting to stand up. The Calgary Flames. I also thought Matt Coronado played maybe one of his better games of recent. Nazem Kadri and Jonathan Huberdeau were complete ghosts. Despite, let's see how much time Huberdeau played, only 16 minutes, which, hey, that's probably about where he should be with how his play has been. And for Kadri, he still played 20 minutes. I would rather see Morgan Frost out there than Nazem Kadri right now. At least one of them acts like they want to play hockey. But this will be our time to head into overtime. The Calgary Flames do manage to get their win. Final score 3-5 over a Blackhawks team that is beginning to struggle. You're starting to see the lack of depth around Connor Bedard starting to show. Let's see if there are any questions other than Mr. Watts. Mr. Watts, I hope I did answer your question well enough about Mackenzie Weegar. I think I'll go a little bit more into Mackenzie. What I am hoping. I'm just hoping that this is an off year for number 50 Calgary Flames. Because it's I by all metrics and eye test, it just seems to not be adding up for Mackenzie. Of course, yeah, he's getting in front of the way of shots. He does great at that. He has found a stable partner in Yankus Netsov, who is adding his reach into the play. Yeah, I think he's been better as of late, but still not good enough for this Calgary Flames roster to be successful. What's your opinion on the Chris Tanev effect? Meaning, once we want to trade a player, they're going down the tunnel injured every night. Yeah, not some great business decisions made by the Calgary Flames this year. My opinion is I think that front office management is trying to wait for perfect. Okay, here's how I feel about our front office. It's just like the Calgary Flames power play of the last 2 months. They keep waiting and waiting and waiting for the perfect opportunity to arise, regardless if it ever will. They do not pull the trigger early enough to know what will happen. Whether that's on the power play or whether it's with names like Blake Coleman, when you had apparently a really good package for both Rasmus and Blake coming out of Dallas, and then you wait a little too long, you try and play the offers off of each other. Like Coleman goes down for who knows how long it will be. But at the end of the day, he's not here, and maybe it's affected the trade. Yeah, it does seem like whenever the Flames really have a blue chip opportunity to trade, guys keep going down tunnel. And then we might be looking at a mediocre return, like waiting too long with Hanifin. I will point to the guys over at Barnburner, and I think Ryan Pinder said something really smart over the last few days. This is a completely different scenario. We aren't having Hanifin and his agent go out looking for who they'll sign with. We will go out hunting the best deal we can. And if it's someone that Rasmus will sign with, sure, great. Then the deal progresses. Rather than narrowing your market to 2, we did with Noah Hanifin. I think that's I'm not going to call him young because Craig Conroy is not young, but a relatively inexperienced general manager learning from a mistake, trying to improve return. Like Craig Conroy, I think his draft strategies are brilliant. I think he's learning from his mistake from the Noah Hanifin. Now, if only he would have learned from his previous mistakes of carrying Daniil Miramanov on the roster for too long, and we'd still have Ilya Solovyov to fill in on that left side, so we aren't forced to run Joel Hanley out every night. But who knows? I'm gonna get out of here. Let everyone go watch the end of this. What's turned into actually a quite exciting Toronto Maple Leafs versus Vegas Golden Knights game, especially after there were a couple injuries in that one, including a Calgary-born Swede that is not returning to the game. So go turn that one on. Enjoy the rest of your night. I know I will not be back. I know Anand's handling the next 2 games. So I will see you when I see you. Conrad Krausert, the Calgary Flames win 3-1. Then Game Over Calgary. Back soon.